Hello friends, I welcome you to the next lecture on Ind AS. In this lecture we are going to deal with borrowing cost. Ind AS 23 and International Accounting Standard 23 prescribe the accounting treatment for borrowing cost. Okay. Now, what is the core principle of Ind AS 23? So according to the standard, if there is any borrowing cost which is attributable to acquisition, construction or production of a qualifying asset, then such borrowing cost has to be considered as part of cost of the asset. It should not be debited to profit and loss account. Other borrowing costs can be debited to profit and loss account. So the core principle of the standard is, if an entity has borrowed funds and the funds have been employed for construction, acquisition or production of a qualifying asset, on the funds which have been borrowed, if any borrowing cost has been incurred, such borrowing cost can be capitalized as part of cost of the asset. So during the period when the asset is under construction, during the period in which the asset is under acquisition or production, and if it takes substantial period of time for completing the acquisition, production or construction of the asset, during the extended period of time, if any borrowing cost is incurred, it can be capitalized, it can be considered as part of cost of the asset. Once the asset is ready for its intended use or for the purpose of sale, if any borrowing cost is incurred, it should be debited to profit and loss account. So during the construction period, if any borrowing cost is incurred for construction, in such cases such borrowing cost can be capitalized as part of cost of the asset. Other borrowing cost should be debited to P&L account. Now, scope of the standard should be applied in accounting for borrowing costs. The standard does not apply to actual or imputed cost of equity. That means dividends expected by equity shareholders, dividends payable to equity shareholders are outside the scope of the standard. But in the case of preference share capital, if preference share capital is redeemable, it is classified as a liability based on the, we can say, the requirements relating to accounting standards on financial instruments. So the standards on financial instruments require redeemable preference share capital to be classified as a liability. If preference share capital is redeemable, it will be classified as a liability. If it is classified as a liability, then the dividends on such preference share capital will be considered as part of borrowing cost only. But if preference share capital is non-redeemable, it is considered as part of equity, then dividends on such preference share is also outside the scope of this standard. Then the third requirement is, if borrowing costs are incurred for assets which are measured at fair value, then such borrowing costs are outside the scope of this particular standard. So let us take an example. Biological assets, let us say cows, buffaloes, sheep, these are biological assets. Biological assets as per Ind AS 41 are measured at fair value. They may satisfy the definition of a qualifying asset. It may take substantial period of time to get the cows, buffaloes or sheep ready for sale, or to bring them to the position where it can be used for whatever purpose you want, we intend to use them. So from the day the calf is born up to the day the cow becomes a milkable cow, it takes a lot of time, and during this period to look after the cow we have borrowed funds and we have utilized those funds. Borrowing costs incurred cannot be capitalized as part of cost of the asset as per the standard, because it is a biological asset measured at fair value. So how to deal with that interest is outside the scope of this particular standard. We would have to debit it to profit and loss account. So if you have incurred borrowing costs for a qualifying asset, but the qualifying asset is a asset which is measured at fair value, then borrowing cost with respect to such asset is outside the scope of this standard. Next, scoping out is inventories which are manufactured on a large scale, on a repetitive basis over a short period of time. Such inventories are outside the scope of the standard. If you have incurred borrowing costs to produce inventory on a large scale repetitively over a short period of time, that means it takes only a short period of time to complete the production process, and it is manufactured in large scale repetitively. In such cases, if any borrowing cost is incurred during this production period, it cannot be capitalized and it cannot be considered as part of cost of production. But if goods take long period of time for the production process to complete, and during this period if any borrowing cost is incurred, it may satisfy the definition of a qualifying asset, and in such cases borrowing cost can be considered as part of cost of production. So only in situations where inventory takes substantial period of time to get ready for sale, in such cases during this period of production, if any borrowing cost is incurred, it can be considered as part of cost of production and can be capitalized as part of cost of the inventory. Okay. Next, definitions. Borrowing costs are interest and other costs incurred by an entity in connection with borrowing of funds. As per the standard, borrowing cost includes three items: interest expense, which is measured using effective interest rate method specified by Ind AS 109. So interest expense will be considered as part of borrowing cost, but such interest has to be measured using effective interest rate method, which is prescribed by Ind AS 109. In our next lecture, in our next presentation, we will see a practical illustration on how to calculate effective interest rate. Second, finance charges with respect to finance leases. So let us say if you have purchased an asset on finance lease, then each lease payment will contain two portion, principal portion and interest portion. So that interest portion will also be considered as part of borrowing cost. Third, exchange differences to an extent can be considered as an adjustment to interest cost. Now what are these exchange differences? Let us say a business entity has applied and it has taken a foreign currency loan. So if you have borrowed money in foreign currency, you have an advantage. The advantage is the foreign banks, the foreign financial institutions may be ready to lend money at a very low rates of interest. In India, companies get loans at a rate of, let us say, 12 to 13%, or sometimes in the case of weak companies, they will be the banks will be ready to lend money to these weak companies at a very high rate of interest. So the interest rates are very high. It says it's about 13, 14, 15% is the interest rate which the companies have to fork out to the banks for taking a loan. But if the company takes a loan from an American bank, that loan may be availed at a rate of only 6% to 7%, or sometimes even 5%. So you have a huge interest saving, but such loans come with a risk attached to it. Let us say you are borrowing $1 lakh. On the date you have borrowed the money, the exchange rate was only 60 rupees a dollar. That means you have borrowed $1 lakh from an American bank and the exchange rate on the date of borrowing was 60 rupees. That means you have borrowed 60 lakh rupees. But by the end of the year, if the dollar rate increases to 70, now your borrowing would stand increased. It will be now $1 lakh into 70 rupees. The liability will increase to 70 lakh rupees. So at the beginning of the year the liability was 60 lakh, but at the end of the year the liability has increased to 70 lakh. There is an exchange loss of 10 lakh. So this is a risk which is attached to foreign exchange borrowings. But there is an advantage also, interest saving. In India you have to pay 13-14% interest, but you are getting the loan from a foreign bank at only 6% or 5% interest. So there is an interest saving as well. So what the standard says is, if there is an exchange loss because of exchange differences, because of restating the loan amount, if you get an exchange loss, the loss to the extent of saving can be considered as part of borrowing cost. So whatever exchange loss you are getting on the foreign currency borrowing, such loss to the extent of interest saving, you have got some interest saving. So to that extent it can be considered as an adjustment to interest cost. Now what may happen is, in a particular year when the loan amount was, let us say, I'll just give you a small example. Let us say at the beginning of the year the loan was taken $1 lakh, the dollar rate was 60. At the end of the year the loan amount is still the same $1 lakh, but the dollar rate is 70. Now the loan amount has increased by 10 lakh. Now if you have an interest saving, this 10 lakh to the extent of interest saving, so you have to estimate what is the interest saving. Let us say on 60 lakh rupees we are paying only 6% interest to American bank. That means we are going to pay only 3,60,000. Whereas if you would have borrowed the same 60 lakhs from an Indian bank, you would have paid 14% interest. 6 lakh into 14% would be 8,40,000. So to that extent there is a saving. 8,40,000, 3,60,000, there is a saving of 4,80,000 rupees. So exchange loss to the extent of interest saving can be considered as an adjustment to interest cost. Now let us suppose in the next year company gets an exchange gain. The dollar rate reduces from 70 rupees a dollar to 65. Now we get an exchange gain. So this exchange gain would now be adjusted from the interest cost. So it will be subtracted. So when there is an exchange loss to the extent of interest saving, it can be added to borrowing cost. Exchange gain, if earlier you have added exchange loss to interest cost, in such cases exchange gain will be subtracted from interest cost. So this is what the standard has to say about borrowing cost. So borrowing cost includes interest calculated using the effective interest rate method. It includes finance charges in a finance lease. It also includes exchange differences to the extent considered as an adjustment to interest cost. In our next presentation, in the next video lecture, we will see practical illustration on how to deal with these exchange losses as well. Now, what is a qualifying asset? Qualifying asset is an asset which necessarily takes substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. So we will say it takes a long period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. Now what is substantial period of time? It is not defined in the standard. Usually it is 12 months. Now examples are given for qualifying assets. Inventories which take 12 months or more for the purpose of for the production process to complete will be considered as a qualifying asset. Manufacturing plants, if you are setting up a steel plant, the construction of steel plant cannot be completed within a period of 12 months. It will definitely take 3 to 4 years for the steel plant to come to the stage where commercial production can begin. So during this period, if any expenditure is incurred, and expenditure is incurred out of funds borrowed, and if any financials are incurred, they can be capitalized as part of cost of the assets. Power generation facilities, intangible assets, if there is software which you are developing, and the development of the software takes long period of time. During this period you have borrowed funds and the funds have been utilized for development of the software. The borrowing cost, the finance charges can be capitalized as part of cost of the asset. Investment properties, buildings are under construction, building takes long period of time to complete, for the construction process to complete. So during this period, if any funds have been borrowed and it has been utilized for construction, so borrowing cost can be capitalized. Bearer plants, apple trees, you are growing apple trees can give you harvest for more than one period. As per Ind AS 41, as per Ind AS 16, it will be considered as a bearer plant. So till the day the apple tree reaches maturity age, whatever expenditure is incurred, if that the expenditure incurred to grow the apple tree to its maturity age, whatever expenditure is incurred will be capitalized as part of cost of the asset. And if the expenditure is, if it is done out of borrowed funds, and if any finance charges are incurred, those finance charges also can be capitalized as part of cost of the apple tree. So these are all examples of qualifying assets. Now, what are qualifying, what are not qualifying assets? Financial assets are not considered as qualifying assets. Inventories, if the production process can be completed in a short period of time, then it is not considered as a qualifying asset. Assets that are ready for their intended use or sale when acquired are not qualified assets. So the asset is already in the position for its intended use, or it is ready for sale. In such cases, it cannot be considered as a qualifying asset. Next, recognition. As per the standard, borrowing costs which are directly attributable to acquisition, construction or production of a qualifying asset can be considered as part of cost of the asset, but there are two conditions. The asset should be capable of generating economic benefits for the firm. That means the entity should be, we can say it should be probable that economic benefits associated with the asset will flow to the entity. Second, the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. When these two conditions are satisfied, borrowing costs attributable to acquisition, construction or production of a qualifying asset can be capitalized. Other borrowing costs can be debited to profit and loss account. In the case of in the case of hyperinflationary economies, hyperinflationary economy is an economy where you have very high levels of inflation for continuous periods of time. That means for continuous 4 or 5 years, let us say there is double-digit inflation, then we may say it is hyperinflationary economy. In the case of hyperinflationary economy, let us say you have borrowed money in a hyperinflationary economy and the interest rate is exorbitant, it is say 40%. Then in such cases, out of 40%, a particular portion of interest is to compensate for inflation, and the remaining charge is for use of money. If you borrow money in a bank in a hyperinflationary economy, the interest rate will be exorbitant. Let us say it is 50%. Then in such case, we will say 25 to 30% is only for compensating for inflation, and the remaining charge is for use of money. So we have to find out of the total interest, a particular portion is towards compensation for inflation, it should be debited to P&L account. Only the remaining portion can be considered as borrowing cost to be capitalized as part of cost of the asset. Next, type of borrowings. Specific borrowings and general borrowing. What is specific borrowings? These are borrowings which could have been avoided if expenditure was not incurred on acquisition, construction or production of a qualifying asset. Such borrowings are called as specific borrowing. We can find one-to-one relationship between the borrowing and the construction, acquisition and production of the qualifying asset. Okay. Or we can say that borrowing would not have occurred if we would not have incurred expenditure on such asset. General borrowings, see, an entity sometimes manages the we can say funds centrally. So the top management will have a department where they are going to pool resources, pool funds from various sources of debts and equity. Let us say the management has arranged money in the form of debt by issuing various debt instruments with different terms and conditions. They have approached various banks and they have borrowed money using at different rates, at different terms and conditions. The funds are pooled and the money is then distributed to various projects and various construction projects which the company is undertaking. Such borrowings are called as general borrowing. That means you cannot find a one-to-one relationship between borrowing and the asset. Funds are pooled and the pooled funds can come from various sources, from various different types of bonds, debentures, or the money would have been borrowed from different financial institutions at different rates of interest, and then the money is used in various we can say projects, or the money may be used in the business of the entity, etc. So those borrowings are called as general borrowings. Now, how to deal with borrowing cost on specific borrowings? So as per the standard, if you have borrowed money specifically for acquisition, construction or production of a qualifying asset, on such borrowing, if you have incurred any borrowing cost which is actually incurred, subtract income from temporary investment of surplus funds, the difference amount will be capitalized as part of cost of the asset. So if you have done a specific borrowing and temporarily till the time the money was spent on the asset, if you have invested it in some other securities and if you have got some income, then that income should be subtracted from the borrowing cost incurred on the specific borrowing. The difference amount, the remaining interest cost, should be added to the cost of the asset in the case of specific borrowings. Now, how to deal with borrowing costs and general borrowings? In the case of general borrowings, what the standard says is you have to find out first of all what is the average carrying amount of the asset or average expenditure which has been incurred on the asset, multiply it with weighted average capitalization rate. Now, what is this weighted average capitalization rate? We have to find out what is the total of borrowing costs incurred on general borrowings for the year. Find out the total of borrowing costs incurred on general borrowings throughout the year. Just take it as the numerator. Divide by the denominator. The denominator is weighted average borrowings. Find out the amounts borrowed from various sources for how many months were they outstanding. Multiply the amount of borrowing with the time weighting factor, that is number of months it was outstanding divided by 12. Each borrowing multiplied by number of months for which it was outstanding during the year divided by 12. Multiply the borrowing with the time weighting factor, take a sum, you will get weighted average borrowing. Numerator should be the total borrowing cost incurred for the year, divided by weighted average borrowing, you will get weighted average capitalization rate. This capitalization rate should be applied to the average carrying amount of the asset. Average carrying amount of the asset will also include borrowing costs which have been capitalized earlier, let us say in earlier years. So average carrying amount of the asset multiplied by capitalization rate, you will get the borrowing cost to be capitalized in the case of general borrowings. But here there is a restriction. The standard says if you are using this average rate for the purpose of capitalizing the borrowing cost, please see to it that the borrowing cost which has been capitalized, it should not be more than the borrowing cost which has actually been incurred. So you cannot capitalize more than what you have incurred. So this check has to be performed when you are capitalizing the borrowing cost. Next, excess of the carrying amount of the qualifying asset over recoverable amount. If an entity estimates or if an entity feels on balance sheet date that the carrying amount of the asset is more than the recoverable amount, or recoverable amount is less than the carrying amount. So carrying amount after including the borrowing cost which has to be capitalized, you feel that the carrying amount is in excess of the recoverable amount. That means by using the asset or by selling the asset we will not be able to recover the carrying amount. That means we are overstating the value of the asset. In such cases, based on relevant standard is Ind AS 36, impairment of assets. Based on the relevant standard, you have to write down or write off a value of the asset, and in future the standard may allow you to write back the write-off also. So you have to do it based on the relevant standard. So on balance sheet date you have to check whether the carrying amount after including borrowing cost which has been capitalized is more than the recoverable amount. If the carrying amount is more than the recoverable amount, we say that the asset is impaired. We have to do write down based on requirement of Ind AS 36, and in future Ind AS 36 may also require write back of such write down. Okay, so you have to do it, that write back and write off and write back has to be done based on other standard, and other standard is nothing but Ind AS 36, impairment of assets. Next, commencement of capitalization. Now the question arises, when can I start capitalizing borrowing cost? The standard says when you can start capitalizing the borrowing cost from the date on which all the three conditions are satisfied. If all the three conditions are satisfied on a particular date, from that date whatever borrowing cost is incurred can be capitalized. The first condition is you should have started incurring expenditure on the asset. Second is you should have started incurring borrowing costs. That means you should have started spending money on the asset, and you should also have started incurring expenditure on borrowing costs. And the third is activities necessary to bring the asset to intended use or sale must have been undertaken. That means activities should also have started. So when all these three conditions are satisfied, only then commencement of capitalization can begin. So expenditure should have begun, the borrowing costs are being incurred now. Third, activities which are necessary to bring the asset to intended use or sale have started, or you have undertaken those activities. So activity can be both physical construction or it can be significant administrative and technical work. So if you can demonstrate that either physical construction has started or significant technical and administrative work has also started, in such case also you can start we can say capitalizing the borrowing cost. Next, expenditure on an asset. So we said, what is an expenditure? We have to capitalize borrowing cost on expenditure which is incurred on the asset. Expenditure on asset includes cash outflow, or it may be an outflow of other assets, or it can be assumption of interest bearing liabilities. But out of expenditure we have to subtract. If a third party has given you a progressive payment, or government has given you a grant, out of the expenditure this government grant has to be subtracted. On the remaining amount of expenditure you can start capitalizing the borrowing cost. Now, the average carrying amount of the asset during a period, including borrowing cost previously capitalized, is normally a reasonable approximation of the expenditure to which capitalization rate is applied in that period. So what the standard says is, when you are applying the capitalization rate, you have to find out what is the average carrying amount of the asset. Average carrying amount of the asset may include borrowing costs which have been capitalized earlier. So you have to find out when was the expenditure incurred during the year, take the expenditure, multiply by time gating factor, the number of months which are there up to the end of the year, divided by 12. Each expenditure multiplied by n by 12. Take the sum, that will give you the average carrying amount of the asset. And on that you have to capitalize the borrowing cost. Multiplied by the capitalization rate, you will get the interest cost to be capitalized. In our next lecture, we will see a practical illustration on how to calculate borrowing cost in such cases. Next, suspension of capitalization. Now, what is suspension? Sometimes what may happen is, if the activities necessary to bring the asset to intended use or sale have been suspended for extended periods of time, in such case the standard requires you to even suspend capitalization. So it may so happen because of a strike, or because of a lockout, or due to some other problem. If the activities necessary to bring the asset to its intended use or sale have been suspended for extended periods of time, in such cases borrowing cost capitalization should also be suspended. And once the activity starts again to bring the asset to its to the intended use or sale, then you can again start capitalization. Okay. Now, in certain situation we need not do suspension of capitalization. One, temporary delays are a part of the production process, are part of the construction process. You cannot avoid it. In such cases, during those delays, you can definitely continue capitalization. Okay. So you can see here, NMT also does not suspend capitalizing borrowing costs when temporary delay is necessary part of the process of getting an asset ready for its intended use or sale. An example is given. Let us say you are constructing a dam or a bridge on a river. So during the monsoon season, when the river is in spate and the river has, we can say, a lot of water, you have to suspend the work on the bridge or on the dam, because if you keep your equipment in the river, it will be washed off. So for 2-3 months the work has to stop, and during this period it's a temporary delay and you cannot avoid it. In such cases, during these 2-3 months you have to do your work on the bank, and you have to do some technical administrative work, and if that work is going on, you can continue capitalization. You need not suspend capitalization. Okay. Cessation of capitalization. Now the question is, when should I stop permanently capitalization? According to the standard, when activities, substantial activities necessary to bring the asset to its intended use or sale are complete, physical construction is complete, maybe some routine administrative work is going on, physical construction is complete, the asset is ready for its intended use or sale, substantially all activities necessary to bring the asset to its intended use or sale are complete. In such cases, you can cease capitalization. What is left? Let us say some decoration is left according to the user specification, or some painting is left according to the user specification, but the asset is ready for its intended use or sale. In such case, you can stop capitalization. You cannot continue capitalization. You are given an example here. If minor modifications such as decoration of property to the purchasers or use specification are all that are outstanding, this indicates that substantially all the activities are complete. I will give you an example. You are constructing a building for a customer. The building is complete. You have to do only some gardening, greening activity. That is only left. The customer has started occupying the building. He has started using the building, but you still have to do the gardening work and the decoration work. Just because the gardening work is incomplete, you cannot continue capitalization on the entire cost of the building. You have to stop capitalization. Okay. Multi-part assets. Now what is multi-part assets? These are assets. The construction of the asset can be taken up in parts, and each part is capable of being used irrespective of the construction activity taking part in other parts. So we can say there is an asset which is being constructed in parts, and one of the part of the asset can be utilized irrespective of the construction phase of the other parts. I'll give you an example. Let us say you are constructing a business park. This business park consists of many buildings. Each building is a separate asset, and let us say few buildings are ready, construction is complete, the buildings are ready, the water connection, the electricity connection, security, everything has been given to those buildings, and the buildings have already been occupied by the tenants. There are we can say few more buildings which are in the construction phase which are not yet occupied by the customer. So we cannot continue capitalization for all the buildings. The buildings which are ready for use and they are already being used, for those buildings borrowing cost capitalization has to stop, but for other buildings it can continue. Now an opposite example is, let us take an opposite example, steel plant. Now steel plant, the construction will be completed in part, but one of the parts cannot be used irrespective of the construction phase of the other parts. In a steel mill you have various processes, or we can say there are various different we can say equipments involved. Let us say there are 4 machines involved, machine 1, 2, 3, 4, and these 4 machines work in a sequence. Even though one of the machine is ready for its intended use, unless other machines are ready, it cannot be used for its intended use. In such cases you cannot stop capitalization for this asset. Okay, so if the assets are going to be used in a sequence, even though one of the assets is complete, unless the other assets are complete, this asset cannot be used for its intended use. In such cases you can continue capitalization. Now, what are the disclosures required by the standard? As per the standard, you have to disclose the amount of borrowing cost capitalized during the period. So how much amount of borrowing cost you have capitalized during the period, it has to be disclosed. And the next is the capitalization rate, which is used to determine the amount of borrowing cost eligible for capitalization. So the capitalization rate which you have computed for general borrowings, which is used for capitalization of borrowing cost, that capitalization rate also has to be disclosed in notes to account. So this was the requirement of Ind AS 23 relating to borrowing cost. Thanks a lot.